Hey guys, welcome back to Pro Gun. If you haven't already done so, please hit the subscribe button. I'd greatly appreciate that. One of my viewers asked me what's the difference between a hammer-fired gun and a striker-fired gun. So I'm going to answer that question. And before we begin, let's just check for safety. There's no magazine. Empty. Same thing with the Glock. No magazine. Empty. Okay, both are clear, both are safe. Okay, a hammer-fired gun, and this 1911 is a single-action hammer-fired gun. And what that means is the action only does one thing. It either cocks and or decocks the hammer. Okay, you have to manually pull the hammer back in order for it to fire. And basically the difference between the hammer-fired and striker-fired guns are the way that the primer on the cartridge is ignited. On a hammer-fired gun, the hammer is basically a weight under spring tension that when you pull the trigger, it smacks the firing pin. The firing pin dents the primer, that causes the explosion, and the explosion causes pressure, and the bullet is forced out of the barrel. Now, there are also double-action pistols, such as the Beretta 92, and when you pull that trigger, it will both cock and decock the hammer. Now, to make things even more confusing is there are internal hammers that you can't see, and when you pull the slide back, it automatically cocks the hammer. And when you pull the trigger, it decocks the hammer and the hammer strikes the firing pin. The difference is that with the external hammers, you can tell whether it's cocked or not. On an internal hammer, you can't tell because you can't see it, and there's no indication. As opposed to an external hammer, you can manually decock it if you want it to. Now, the difference is when we go to a striker-fired gun, striker-fired guns are cheaper to make, and the striker fire system has got less moving parts than a hammer-fired gun. And basically the way it works is the striker system looks like when you take the insert of a pen out, okay? So picture this tip here being the firing pin on the striker. The difference is the striker is contained inside the slide. So when the slide goes back, there's a transfer bar that lifts up. Then the hammer grabs the transfer bar and it pulls the striker back. And after you fully depress the trigger, it releases the spring tension and it sends the striker forward, and the firing pin on the striker hits the primer, causes the explosion, etc. So it basically comes down to how the firing pin is ignited. Now, as far as one being better than the other, as far as reliability goes, I don't think so. I think that they're both reliable. They're both capable. I mean, Glock has been using the striker fire system for a long time, and there's a lot of new guns coming out. All seem to be striker fired now as well. One of the differences you'll notice is that most striker-fired guns are polymer, as opposed to the hammer-fired guns that are metal. However, the Smith & Wesson Equalizer is polymer, and it does have an internal hammer. One thing I will say to answer is one better than the other. I would say that, in my opinion, the trigger is much better on a hammer-fired gun than it is on a striker-fired gun. I love my Glocks, but the triggers really suck. And I find that on most polymer guns, out of the box, the triggers are very spongy. Some of them are actually very creepy. They have a non-existent wall, and some of them you can't even feel the reset. But it doesn't make them unreliable. It's just a creepy feeling. But that's just me. I personally find that the hammer-fired guns have a better trigger, but I still love my Glocks, and I have a lot of other polymer-fired guns, and I carry them regularly too, so I'm not concerned. So the issue comes down to is what's better for you. I would suggest that you rent a few guns, try some of each, and see what you like better. Hope this answers your question. Thanks for watching.